You're listening to Through Our Lens with the Disabled and Non-Disabled Alliance at Sacramento State, a club, organization, whatever, for disabled students, staff, and their allies to discuss and educate each other about disability-related topics, advocate on behalf of disabled students and the community, and to hang out together and just be a community.
So we want to be more recognizable to Sac State. So please join the conversation by following and messaging us on Instagram at Dana@SacState. It's DANA @SacState. Hi everyone, my name is Brian Cal and I'm the host of this podcast and one of the officers for the Disabled and Non-Disabled Alliance. You're listening to Through Our Lens, episode 7 with the Disabled and Non-Disabled Alliance, a podcast where we have a conversation on disability. Our episode is titled Friends, Environment, and Disability. So let me kind of explain this title. So the environment and disability are like interconnected, and you know how friends can be, right? Like sometimes they're like good times, sometimes there's like awful and like bad times. And like for example, when like buildings don't consider like universal design, like there's no ramp for like wheelchair users to kind of get in, they're not your friends. Or like that's a really bad time. And like for example, like for friends, when friends don't really consider your feelings, like that's like a bad time. Okay, and as always, this is a very free-form format. So expect a conversation with many tangents, just like how a regular conversation would go. And I am here with the president, William, and
Hello.
I'm also here with Will Nguyen, a member of the
Hello.
Disabled and Non-Disabled Alliance, to kind of join the conversation. Hello, everyone. Yeah, to kind of begin, I kind of wanted to ask, what's kind of like your definition of the environment?
Gosh, it's everything. It's all of the things.
Yeah, it's everything.
Right now it's war, so that's fun.
Well, the environment to me is a place to get out of the house, because if I stay too long inside, I feel my life is not fulfilling what out there.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I feel. And I have like a story to kind of tell. So like I like going out to parks whenever like I feel unfocused. So like during the height of the pandemic, there are times when I didn't leave the house for like weeks on end. And like looking at the same thing every single day, like my computer, my walls, my room, the unnatural light from my ceiling, it gets really tiring and really boring. And and it also declines my like attention, my focus. So if I'm in the house for so long, it makes me kind of unfocused to do like schoolwork. And like I start watching YouTube to kind of stimulate like my mind instead of doing the schoolwork. And this is not really beneficial for me because it just makes me stay unfocused longer. So when I need a break, when I need a mental reset, I go to my local park to kind of just like enjoy nature. And like after like being in like outside for like 30 minutes, it does reset my mentality to work. And there's a thing called attention restoration theory. It's kind of characterized as nature kind of restoring your directed attention or like your focus. And it also restores your decision making because when you're out in nature, you're not doing anything. So like there's no like stimuli for you to kind of like negotiate. Like when you're at your house, sometimes you have to decide, what should I eat? Should I do this? Should I do that? But when you're outside, you have nothing to decide. So that's why it kind of like resets my mind because I don't have to focus on anything at all. Yeah, does that like kind of make sense?
Yes, it is.
By analogy, my eyes kind of work the same way, where if I have to focus on stuff for too long or too much, they literally tire out because I'm trying to like hold them steady. And so it can help to be able to draw away from stuff I have to look at. And so getting into an environment, let's say, where looking at stuff and understanding what it is visually just isn't important, it can be helpful for that. Unfortunately, there's nothing I like to do that's like that, except maybe listen to audiobooks, but whatever. It's a fine theory.
Yeah, I think like I kind of like learned this theory from the class I'm taking. It's called the science of nature engagement. So kind of explains like why you feel happier when you're outside, why it improves the quality of life, like when you go outside.
And I want to add, like, if we have to choose the environment we go to, because if we go to the city, it's a lot of noise, hustling, and everything, and it's not gonna be peaceful. But my favorite place to go is to the wood, and there's the only thing you see is trees and fresh air.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like when you're like in nature, you don't hear anything. You're just peace, right? Peaceful,
Yep, peace.
peaceful environment. I guess
I realize this is not what was meant, but like if you can see the fresh air, that ain't fresh. Most likely.
yeah, it's not fresh.
Well, that's not what I mean. I
I
mean,
know,
like,
yeah.
feel the fresh air.
Look, we're good at podcasting.
Yeah.
And I'm so full of hatred. Okay, go on. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, so like where do you go like exactly? Like in the woods? Like do you have like a place in mind?
so, so this place is next close to San Francisco. It's
Uh-huh.
called, I think, Beerwood.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah.
It's big. So I only go there for like half of the way because it's really far away. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've been there a couple of times. I don't like actually like remember because like
yeah,
it was like a few years ago. But like yes, that I think that's a good place to
yeah.
kind of
There's a lot of part, but it's too far away. It's like 6 hours. Cannot go up there. Too far away.
Mhm. Do you have like a local space, like a local park that you can go to?
So in Sacramento, I would go to the Osac, but then like next to the, like on the boat
Mm.
and sit there and look at the river. Yeah.
Yeah, I do too, honestly. I like going to downtown Sac. I don't know, just because there's like things to do there and like how
Yes.
you can just watch the water and chill.
And thus, because there's a lot of restaurants with good food, so I just go there.
Yeah, eating good food's nice. I also like going to the Capitol Park because it's a huge like green space. So it's like
Yes.
really relaxing.
So I have a question. Do you know the MBA walk?
The MB the N the sorry.
MBA.
Yeah.
Yeah,
MDA.
I went there like several times, and I go around the Capitol building, and it's it's in the morning, and it's really like everybody friendly, and the environment is fresh, and it makes me like forget everything and just enjoy the moment.
Yeah. I know like there's this one of the concepts that kind of explains in my class is like you're like in awe, right? Of like how peaceful, how beautiful nature is. Something like that, kind of
Yep.
like how yeah, it's really peaceful. Yeah. I kind of want to talk about like the nature-based therapy and like it's one of the concepts I'm learning in my class. So like the nature-based therapy is just a kind of like process of systematic connection of healing like through the natural environment. So like or like the practice of being in nature to kind of boost your growth, healing, and like especially mental health. And how sometimes it can be treated uh ADHD can be treated through nature. So instead of taking like meds, you can just go outside, be in nature, and like there's actually like a lot of science behind it. So for ADHD, when they're outside for like a limit for like at least like 20 minutes, their directed attention ability is improved, and like getting in nature like helps with specific tasks, like running on a treadmill, playing indoor basketball, and even like looking at pictures of nature can improve focus. And like that's similar to my story and how like when I go outside, I'm more focused. How does that sound? I guess.
I mean, yeah, it brings to mind questions about like why that is the case or why that seems to be the case, psychologically speaking. My mind immediately goes to the sort of evolutionary perspective. You know what, we come up in a certain kind of setting, and then we build, you know, walls between us and that setting, historically speaking, and so that becomes nature in its sort of, you know, stereotypical form, I guess. The archetype of nature that we think about when with the trees and leaves and stuff, and not the actual nature where it's like the vacuum of space. It becomes like the thing that we're in the back of our heads familiar with, and in the forefront of our minds unfamiliar with. And that's an interesting like tension to see in the psychology. But maybe like that's, I mean, quite speculative. Like
That's true. Like in my class, like my professor, Dr. Luvis, he does explain it in that way. Like we're made for nature, we're built for nature. So like if you're in nature, that's just your natural environment, right?
well, close there too. Anyway, these are technically, even like parks are technically like, if not artificial, then at least like cultivated, right? But that brings to mind the issue: how accessible are parks? And I mean to say, not just for wheelchair accessibility, but how far away are they from various residencies? How do people get to them? Because if you have to drive, it's not a very safe way to do it. So I'm wondering, like, at the grander scale of the city and municipality, what are the ethics of like and logistics of making park spaces available, given that they're quite helpful to have? I don't know how to do that, but it'd be very, very cool to be able to. If we
Yeah, like
didn't have so many roads, I think it'd be a much lesser issue.
Yes. Like from my experience, I actually had an interview with Southgate Recreational Park District, and I was asking like those similar questions, like what's kind of like your focus? So like the Southgate Recreational Park District, their focus is in like improving parks for like less fortunate people, or like I guess like less kind of like less less, I guess like, yeah, less fortunate. And like their focus is to improve the parks, make new parks when like they need it. So like it's like this proximity thing too. Like the parks has to be accessible, has to be close enough so you can just like walk there. And like I know like when people like don't have access to a car, like that's their only like option to go outside. They can't really drive to or take the bus like anywhere because it takes way too long. But then they can just walk to a local park and they're doing something and they're not like bored inside their house. So does that make sense?
Yeah, the local part is the benefit for the people that like us, we cannot drive because sometimes on the national part, it's really hard to get it in there because it's all the winding street and everything. So I think it's the part like in the neighborhood helps a lot.
Yeah, it does help a lot. And like that's where I go, my local park, because it's the closest thing. I don't want to ask anyone to drive me anywhere. And she's like, let me go out by myself and experience nature in a way.
Yeah, you know, I didn't research beforehand like to what extent that is an issue, like people not being able to access parks even even in theory. Uh, I guess the further question is like how well understood is it that being in a sort of characteristically natural environment is helpful. I think that's poorly understood. I you know, we this like this generation to which I'm either the youngest member or not a member at all. This like uh, the millennial generation, I guess, is the demographic roughly that I've noticed talks a lot about self-care, and rarely is a hike mentioned. I don't know. And ostensibly that's like that's the cohort who most prioritizes these sorts of things. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think I know like there's a lot of science behind like nature and how it improves the quality of life. Like for example, Dr. Luvis, his main focus is like in recreational therapy and how it improves your quality of life, makes you happier in a way. And like there's lots of like different professions. Like that's why like I want to be like a city planner I want to be a part of projects that improves parks in a way. Because I know like that makes me happy. Going out to green space, feeling nature, that makes me really happy.
Yeah, and then again, I guess the next a separate but interesting question becomes, what is the sort of cityscape like outside of the green spaces or apart from the green spaces? Because that obviously carries issues as well. If we're talking about like wheelchair accessibility to the city in this various parts of the city, it's inevitable that we have to talk about things like crosswalks and uneven sidewalks and stuff. And the irony is, like, trying to introduce natural scape to the city often generates uneven sidewalks. If you, I mean, probably people have noticed before me, but like it's very frequently the tree roots that are making the sidewalk intraversible by at least some of the vehicles that would want to access them. I've definitely seen sidewalks that were like weirdly built around trees, and then the trees started to grow underneath them.
Yeah, it gets really
like compromise that was made at some point.
it gets really bumpy like when I go on it, or sometimes it's like a huge bump. And it's like, why is this? Why is that thing?
Yeah, it is.
It doesn't get fixed for a while, right?
No, I go to the OSAC a lot, and there's like one place is they never fix, and I see it there all the time.
Yeah, I guess the city is slow when fixing things, right? That's
Yeah,
how
yeah.
like the city is. And like I mean, it is like a big like I guess like area that they have to focus on. So like that is a little understandable, but like it sucks when like things are not designed universally, right?
And then sometimes I know that they have a lot of the other stuff to do it too, but when they fix it, they don't even like fix the whole thing, but they use like asphalt, and they just lay over it. So like when you go over it, it just go up and down, and it's really the the hardest thing for me to go through because my head is my fault or sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, those like I've seen those as well. The asphalt patch jobs.
Oh yeah, those ones. Yeah, I think
Asphalt
that's
patch jobs is asphalt patch job is my new D&D character.
yeah, I think that's what's happening at Sac State, right? Like when you're like walking around I guess like you see all these like asphalt like lines, right?
Yeah, yes.
Like by the University of Union, by like Amador, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like the one by like on the side of the library. I go through that a lot of time in the back, and it's bumpy. It's really bumpy.
Yeah, it's really bumpy. Are you talking about like in between Tahoe Hall and Amador, right?
No, actually, like in between the union and the library.
Okay, that area.
So
Yeah.
that I think make a problem for me too, because when I go home, there's a lot of students walk behind and in front. But when I saw like all the bumpy, I have to slow down. But I think because we go kind of fast, it make problem where people might hit my wheelchair or might hit somebody. That's a problem.
Yeah, that is a problem. And how like I don't know, sometimes people don't pay attention to like their surroundings, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
I-
personally like haven't hit anyone at all at Sac State because I'm careful.
Well, that's why I don't use phone while walking.
Yeah. Um, I like how like I guess like the white part, the white kind of sidewalk was like implemented because it makes everything flatter, right? I think last time when I was like there, like that wasn't there. And like that kind of area in between Amador and Tahoe, that was uneven. And that was like the hardest part, like for me to
Oh,
drive through.
okay. I'm not familiar with that though.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel so unfamiliar with the campus even still because I've been here for a long time, but it's mostly been virtual. I say a
Yeah.
long time, like maybe a couple years now, but
Couple years. Yeah, I've been like all 4 years of like my college experience, so I do kind of know the campus a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Will, have you been on campus for like 5 years too,
Yeah, I've
or have
been
you
in
transferred?
campus for like I would say more than 2 years, and then we go to Zoom.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah.
So like
But
the first time I go to school, it's all the hall, the Mariposa and every hall over there. I I look at the map, but then still have to go around, and I don't know where to go.
yeah. Are you talking about the campus map that Sac State provides us?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really trash map. That's an awful map.
Yeah.
Yeah, I make maps, all right. I'm taking this class called cartography, where we use like software like ArcGIS, where we kind of like create
Yeah.
maps, get layers from like the city department, and kind of look at it. And like the maps that actually like the map that they made was not even on ArcGIS, where it's like I guess like a map making program. They use I forget what it's called, but it's for engineering. Do you know what I'm talking about, Will?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
yeah, it's the one used for engineering. And like
Okay.
that, yeah, but that isn't made for like maps in general. And like they didn't even consult like a geography major or like a person who
Yeah.
knows how to make maps.
Okay.
They just it's just an ugly map and it doesn't help you like navigate stuff. And they have like useless information, like a specific name for like I guess like a baseball field. And but then they don't have like specific like information on like the bikes, I guess, on like the bike lanes. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
awful.
Okay. So I want to bring back to
Yes.
the walkway. So do you know the new building where they like in the
The
other
science,
side of the union?
yeah, the science building.
So on the side there's a walkway, and I don't understand why they do that kind of payment, because when I go through that, it's my sorry, my whole wheelchair is shaking. So that's I, I feel I don't like it though.
Yeah, I don't like it either. Honestly, like my wheelchair is shaking. I'm so used to that, so it doesn't really affect me at all. I'm just like I'm moving, shaking.
Yeah,
A chair
but
shakes, but like I'm used to it. Like it sucks that I get used to it.
yeah, my hand is really weak, so if I go through that, it's gonna drop.
Yeah, like especially if it's so bumpy, I have to go really slow
Yeah,
to make sure that I don't fall or anything.
it's that sucks. The worst thing that ever happens to me as a result of like pavement is that I either stub my toe or like trip in the dark or something. Um, so that leads us pretty fairly neatly into like talking about the sort of strictly artificial environments,
Mhm.
like interior
Yeah,
environment.
yeah. Let's move on.
And I'm gonna, if we have time, I'm gonna bring this conversation up to like the financial environment as
Ooh, that
well,
sounds
the
fun.
digital space.
Yeah.
But like the artificial environment, the craziest things can sort of help and hurt in artificial environments. So as I'm sure you'll know more about than I do, but like right off the bat, things that come to mind are like um, the lighting in a particular room and the extent to which over which you have like control of that lighting can help, and it can help or hurt me a lot because I need a lot of it, but not so much that I can't tell what's going on my computer screen or whatever it is. I imagine that the that we could talk again about Hornet Commons and the various ways that various sort of apartment buildings fail to meet ADA standards, and that the ADA standards aren't even particularly good at guaranteeing accessibility. We could talk about like the dumbest little like building mistakes that seem to be made. Where, for example, if you at the transition point in my apartment between the laminate in the kitchen and the carpet for the living room, there's this bump that you'd have to traverse, and depending on the vehicle, that could be tough. I don't know. That's pretty much what I got. Things like I don't know. artificial environments can be so incidentally unhelpful. Like
Mhm.
the relationship between the individual in the environment can get thrown into chaos so easily, so quickly.
Yeah, Will, can you kind of like, I guess like your background is in interior architecture. Can you
Uh,
kind of explain like what your perspective is on it?
so you know, uh, like when building like a an artificial environment like the walkway, I feel like it's sort of like you have to have like the experience, like how for example my wheelchair go go through that, and how you feel about that, and it and af- from that experience I have to like think about how they're gonna uh, feel the environment, the inside. I mean, any environment as a friend, and if it's not function good enough for the user, it's really uh, I try to say something else, but I forget. So yeah, I guess it's really based on the experience of a person when somebody designed it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Like some like for example, the Hornet Commons, they didn't, I don't think they consulted like professionals, but they consulted like people living with disabilities, like wheelchair users.
Yeah, I think they generalize everybody, so they assume that that is the the ADA requirement, and they just do it and don't consider any different different people. You know.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I guess like the professionals are based on like the ADA, but like sometimes the ADA just isn't enough, right?
Yeah, it's not enough.
Hmm.
It's one of those things where everybody, the incentives are misaligned with the hope, with the intended impact, the teleology of the project. Because everybody involved with the building of the building, forgive me for that, is in this to make money, and in order to make money they have to be compliant with the law, at least insofar as they have to be compliant with the law at the will of enforcement, um, in order to do things like avoid lawsuits and stuff. That is not the same as having the goal of making the building useful to people. It sometimes aligns. If the building is useful in specific ways to enough people, then it can make money. But it being the maximum, having the maximum utility is not necessary or sufficient for profit. So it's just it's one of millions of examples of like of capital being a perverse incentive. um, but I want to ask as well, like, what do we think about the prospect of how, like, philosophically, I guess, environment shapes behavior rather than the other way around? Um,
Yeah,
because it'd be
yeah,
really
no,
easy
like
to understand the individual as the sole actor in a particular situation, but the individual is in all cases responding to incentives and pressures and logistical limitations from, for lack of a less broad term, the environment. And that how to, so I'm wanting to gather thoughts on as well on like uh, how that relationship like manifests itself in various kinds of environments, I guess. Trying to arrive at like helpful language in which to like couch this all, but that may not be clear.
yeah, I know like from like a city planning like perspective, you build things so that people use it. So like you build like like really good bike lanes so that people can use it. Like if it's not there, then it kind of like, yeah, if bike lanes aren't there and doesn't make people feel safe, then they're not gonna bike there, right?
Or they're going to, and they're going to die. I mean, bike lanes. I moved to Sacramento. I moved from Sacramento to San Diego both cities trash bike lanes the whole way. I mean, there's a couple of stoplights by the Sac State campus that are sort of calibrated for bicycles to be able to turn left, but that's the best example of like bicycle transit accommodation I have ever seen, and it's one, maybe two stoplights in the middle of the city. But yeah, but that kind of brings in the idea, like cyclists, I could talk for hours about this, but like cyclists are a really good case study in like responding to limitations and pressures from the environment, because the cities, when you build roads into a city, you build them like veins to a body. They really have to go everywhere, so they really spread out the city by force. And what that means is that the most efficient way to get anywhere will be by road, and as no matter how dangerous that is. And the road pushes everything away from you, for like the more, where you live is more likely to be further away from where you need to be, under a system that emphasizes roads and parkways and parking structures and parking lots and all this other car-based infrastructure. And so cyclists are kind of pressured onto the roads, hence you build the bike lanes into the size of the roads. No matter how dangerous that is, like it can be understood as stupid to ride a bicycle in certain parts of the city, but that can be your only option, financially or in my case visually or ethically. And so it's a case where the individual is operating in good faith, but under the constraints of the cityscape, and the effect is that it's very dangerous. It's just so yeah, I don't know, that's just a very compelling example to me, because it is personal. Because
Yeah, I mean, it is personal. I do understand that. And like,
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Keep going. Oh, so I want to add, so because sometimes designer forget to sorry about my dog. Um, so they more focus on the design and the aesthetic, like how the street have to be a straight line, but sometimes they forget how the people gonna use that, how the bike lane gonna go through, and how safe. So yeah, sometimes people forget to design with the function.
yeah. Do you know why like cities are built in a grid?
Well, let me recall what I learned from my professor.
Okay,
Uh,
I mean, like I do know the answer, but like, yeah, tell us.
is it easy to go, like all the benefit of go one block, two block, and I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. The reason why it's like every city is like based on a grid, because it makes it so easy to city plan. I know like one time when I played like The Sims or like a city planning game, like it's always recommended for us to make a grid line,
Yes.
because it's so easy to kind of plan. Like, oh, this section is going to be for a business. This section is going to be for food. This section is going to be for the capital. This section is going to be for the park. It just makes it so free, like flowing, I guess. Makes it
So
easy.
yeah, it's easier because uh, is it less on in Washington DC? They have grid, but then there's like the central the road to the White House and what's that the big building, white building. I don't remember.
Yeah, no, like I've been to Washington DC before, and it is essentially like there's so many like attractions to do. Like there's a George Washington monument. There's like different towers and stuff. I don't know what it's called, but like it's a walking distance, right?
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, that's the cool thing about a few different sort of cities, is that they're mostly built with stuff within walking distance because the original plans for the city and a lot of the history is based in times before urban sprawl was a really bad problem for cityscapes, which to be clear is the fault of the automobile. And by
Yes,
extension the
yes.
people driving them, but that's another thing entirely. Like another case where like the environment shapes behavior, where people are forced effectively to get cars and,
Yeah.
and to
I mean,
use
like,
them.
I think like the reason why people live in the suburbs is because of cars. So like they used to live in like in downtown to kind of work, but because they have a car, they could just live on the outskirts and live in like suburbia. Like
Because
have
everyone
a
else has a
nice.
car, the city is a bad place to
Mhm,
live because it's really loud and smelly and
mhm.
dangerous.
Yeah,
It is.
and like that's why like new like developments are built, like the Pocket area, the Greenhaven area, like
Oh,
they were built because of the I-5 and how like essentially they can like live there in like in their expensive housing and just drive straight to work if they live like if they work in the city because of how I-5 is.
Yeah, that increased the population. That's why they have to expand 50 highway 50. Oh no, you talking about I-5. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm talking about I-5.
they're all
Yeah,
the same to me.
yeah, they're all the same. There's
Yeah, yeah, they're all the
I-5,
same.
there's 50, there's 80. What else? 90.
99.
There's one category for things that do kill animals. There's another category for things that don't. Roads are in the former. I have no further categorization in my head for roads.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes roads are like your best friends. Sometimes like they're your enemies, right?
Well, yeah, and it's quite circumstantial, but like
Mhm.
I would still contend that when they're your friend, that's because they're everywhere, and so they become the most efficient way to access stuff, and they
Mhm.
force you to use the most efficient way because again, everything gets spread out. I mean, I don't know. The best use I can think of for roads, apart that like are not commuting, like what would I asked myself the question, like what would ideally cities be like if they were not over reliant on the automobile, if there were the fewest of them possible, because that's the best articulation of the automobile, for there to be relatively few of them, maybe not zero but few, because that's the version of events where urban sprawl is minimized. The cars themselves are safest to drive by virtue of there being very few of them again, and fewer people need them, so that it's less of a burden on people who can't afford them, which is a lot of people. I haven't talked about wealth inequality yet, but like if you want to explain the suburbs, um,
Yeah, explain it.
oh, World War II, obviously. No,
Yeah.
that's the financial environment, man. Shaping behavior. And the financial environment shaping behavior leads me into cryptocurrencies, which is a total rabbit hole.
Which is
I
a tangent.
Um,
Yeah,
I hate
yeah,
pushing
but
passion,
I
but like,
guess
yeah, that's not the idea.
no, it's not. Okay, yeah, there's some history on like why there's like a I-5, why there's freeways like in Sacramento and so many different cities.
Ah,
So I think in the 1960s, around 1970s, there's a thing called urban renewal. Essentially, it's like an urban renewal projects. So essentially, the federal government kind of like gave money to cities if they were to build like highways, and that's how like the internet. What's the highway called? I mean, the highway belt or something like that. It's called something, but it's like the state highway system. Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah.
oh yeah, the interstate
Yeah,
highways.
yeah. Interstate
It's a
highway. There
state,
it
yeah.
goes. Yeah, and like that's how like they were all. That's why they're all interconnected because the federal government gave money to cities to kind of connect those like different parts of the city, and that's why we have it. And like the reason why this is like kind of important to highlight is because like there were like neighborhoods in like those areas where I-5 is now, or 99 is now, and like basically they kind of the city like kind of chose those areas because they're like people of color and they weren't like affluent, and they kind of like destroyed that neighborhood and made I-5 and made 99 for the sake of the automobile to kind of make it easy for like people to live in the suburbs just to drive to downtown.
Yeah, yeah.
And just to
And
add insult to injury, I learned in AP Gov about eminent domain, and roads and freeways are the quintessential example that are given for like legitimate and just uses of eminent domain by the federal government. And that reflects a deeply bad understanding of roads and freeways and such. Sorry, go on, Will. Christ, this is an
well,
apocalypse.
I don't know this, but I heard somebody say the reason why they make like big freeway, like the freeway go to Roseville or somewhere like Rockland.
Mhm.
It's big and flat because it's made for war. It's there for, and you know how airplane uh can I don't know touch down, and
Yeah.
all the time they can go easier. Yep, and that's just in the wartime. But I hope we don't have any war here. So
I mean, probably
um,
not.
it's more nowadays more for the automobile.
Yeah. Like cities are made for the automobile, are made for cars.
Yep.
hmm Yeah, but going back to what you said, William, like if there wasn't cars, if there wasn't like urban renewal projects, then I think we'll be living in more of a mixed use area, right? Like like in downtown, there'd be more housing or like
Yeah. Yes.
yeah, and like there wouldn't
And
be like suburbs for the
and
like
that I think is the benefit of freeway. So you can go faster and you know less time to commute. Like I go to factory to my house. It's only 10 minutes. So why would I live in the dorm? You know.
yeah, yeah, it makes it easier to commute. But
Yeah.
like if there wasn't cars like that, you'd be living closer to I guess to campus anyways, right?
Yeah. If I don't have
Yeah,
a car, I have to live up there.
yeah. I mean, if cars just didn't exist at all,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
how would it change I think it would change everything.
I mean the city is gonna be populated, overpopulated.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it'd be wildly populous, but like
Yeah.
that's kind of a good thing. I would think that like putting housing where the parking lots currently are
Yeah.
would be sort of ideal because that makes the housing less expensive and it makes the housing
Yeah.
closer to amenities and stuff, and it gives you, I don't know, the greater possibility of community because you have to
Yeah.
live near people and ride with them during public transit and stuff. Um, there are reasons to think it could be better. If the card didn't exist, that probably wouldn't be the best articulation. I think like the limited usage of them is the way to go, but that's a separate sort of tangential case here. If there were just supposedly just a lesser usage, I think that could be a really good articulation because it would just force people to rather maybe it wouldn't force people to use kinds of transit that put them in danger. Um, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think there'd be more like mixed use areas. And like if I guess like if we did live in the suburbs, it'd be like a mixed use area. So it'd be like there's like a movie theater close by, and there's like more apartments nearby, and there's like a park. There's like I guess like stores, like food places. It'll be like closer together because of the lack of the car. And I think public transit would be like a good thing, would be like the main mode of transportation. If
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
limited like I guess cars.
yeah. And that when that day comes, I'm gonna get a longboard.
One day. Yeah, but that ain't gonna happen, honestly.
Probably
Like
not.
everyone likes cars. And like, I don't know. Like I use a car because it's efficient, like you said it will. You
Yeah,
just yeah.
yeah, we've made sure of it as a society.
Yeah.
That's
I
why it's
just
That's
really hard to
why
like blame people, for using cars. They have to as a question of logistics.
if there's no car, we use horse.
horses.
Like I thought I watched The Walking Dead, and that's how they do. There's no gas or anything. They
Yeah.
just use horse, and then they use part of the car, cut it out, and then like a sheet to let the horse pull it.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
See, like Uber starts to incorporate like chariots and
Yeah.
horse-drawn carriages, palanquins. Yeah. So we could also I'm the worst because now I want to talk about like zoning laws and stuff.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about zoning.
Yeah.
I love zoning.
So my understand and you may have a more robust understanding than I do, but from what I do understand, like zoning is hugely functional of like the prioritization of suburbs and stuff. We have a situation right now where a lot of plots of land are designated for single family homes. There's been an amendment to that in California somewhat recently, where certain plots can be devoted to effectively four single family units as opposed to just one, by way of installing two like townhomes in those plots, and that'll be like within regulation. But that's like a slightly more sort of beneficent amendment to what I understand to be a deeply bad rule, which is the rule that states that single family homes are the norm. They're not. Like financially, economically, culturally speaking, they should not be considered to be the norm. For a lot of different reasons. One of which that I'll mention is just that the social impact of suburbia is less than ideal when you have this sort of there's a tension when you live in the suburbs, if you live especially under like a homeowners association, where your house is at the same time your exclusive property, in which you're allowed to shoot an intruder if there is one, or if you perceive there to be one in some cases, and so it's like your castle, but it's not really yours because you are expected to be selling it on at some point in the future. A house is not a home; it's an investment under capitalism. And I say, assuming you, I don't know, don't intend to die there or something. I'm not really sure why it's considered to be an investment for almost everybody who gets a home or gets a house, but it's generally understood to be the case. And renting is arguably worse because you don't even get the benefits of having it be an investment. But for housing specifically, there's this social phenomenon where you're simultaneously part of a community, but that community is held together by the prospect of making money off of the properties. And hence the homeowners association trying to make sure all the property values stay up and make sure no homeless people are there, because that would drive the property values down or something. That's not statistically true, but and you're in this community, but you are like separated from that community by virtue of walls and fences and stuff, outside of, quite apart from like what you might experience in an apartment building where you at least like run into people in the hallways and stuff. So it's this weird like social isolation, except in terms of capital in the suburbs. And I grew up there. I'm pretty sure I know this for a fact. And that's before we talk about the problem of housing being ludicrously expensive, because resources of housing is being built according to what people speculate will be profitable rather than what will be livable. Again, it's this tapestry, this spider web of everybody operating often in good faith according to perverse incentives. But yeah, sorry, that's more or less my piece on it. Please go.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of go back to zoning. So basically, like, to kind of like change the zone. So like, say if it's single family home and then change it to like more of a commercial like zone, you'll have to go to the city department. It's like whenever you want to make changes, you have to go to the city department to make those changes. Like, and like that's why like it's so hard to kind of move away from like suburbs. It's like it's like a long process of getting that changed, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is financial issue also. And I So for the zoning, I understand how like all the skyscraper in New York, how they want to be like there's a lot of people living there and they want to decrease the money they have to pay for rent and that when they make the building taller and taller. But there's an issue where the taller you go, the more expensive it is. So that's the line between like the living and I don't know the richest.
Yeah, I mean, like think of like hotels in the richest cities. Like
Yes.
I guess like the top floor, the condo, I guess, is the most expensive one, right?
Yeah, and they bring up the issue how like if you bring if you go up, then the price is the rent price is less for people that need a place, but in a city like New York, it's just more expensive the more you go up.
Yeah, it just makes it more expensive. And like New York, is like a really old city. So I guess that kind of makes sense why it becomes more expensive because everyone
Yeah,
wants to live there and like everyone needs housing.
Yeah.
Might as well make it expensive, right?
it's more like a scenery also.
Scenery is nice.
Yeah, I personally am fond of the idea in theory of like rooftop gardens, and I make those qualifications because I've never actually seen one.
Oh yeah. I
think,
like
like,
I like
Yeah.
rooftop gardens too. Like I
Mhm.
know like in like different like countries like Tokyo, there's green spaces there, or like Hong Kong, there's green spaces on top of there. Mhm.
and just to bring disability back into it real quick, when we talk about the suburbs, there is oftentimes the issue of like mobility impairment, where the houses are being designed to look pretty and retain value and all this fun stuff. And so they're designed with things like steps right at the front door for no reason.
Oh yeah, there's no like I haven't seen a house with no like natural ramp, with no
Yeah.
like natural way to get in for wheelchair users. I like my dad had to like make make I guess like a ramp for me, like a wooden ramp for me to get into the house. Like
Yeah, yeah,
No.
and I want to bring up the coding. So
yeah.
yeah, because you know, I don't like the fact that it's not ADA in the residential house, but then the code doesn't require a residential house, much like like how you need to have a ramp or the elevator, and it's not required. So sometimes the uh, the real estate, I don't know, what is that? Real estate company and realtor, they built the house that for aesthetic, but not function. Yeah.
Yeah, like I guess like I like when I transitioned to a chair, I just haven't been upstairs for a long time, like because of that, because there's no like elevator for me. Like if I wanted like a like an addition, that's gonna cost me money.
Yeah, but the only thing they have is
Yeah.
the wide enough door to get through, like 3 feet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but yeah, but that's it. Like
Yeah,
there's
that's it.
no like natural ramp.
And so that's a huge part of this too, where we build the environment in artificial environments, particularly in such a way as to make things harder for disabled people all the time. I wanted to bring in as well the idea about elevator accessibility in these very tall buildings. We talk about I talk about the cityscape like it's got like it's or like apartments don't have issues, but one of the issues is oftentimes that people with mobility impairments are placed on higher floors, and obviously in the event of a fire, there's a pretty substantial risk of the elevator being unusable. So this being California, that's a huge problem.
That's awful. Yeah, like when
Yeah.
you're on a 100th floor, oh, there's a fire. You can't use the elevator. So like, how are you gonna go downstairs?
Yeah, that's why
It
when
doesn't
I
make
use
sense.
the that's why when I go to my studio, it's in the Melposa, the fourth floor. I I still have that like nervousness. Like, what if something happens?
I
How
have
am
that
I gonna go
nervousness.
down?
every day, every time I'm in
Yeah,
class.
yeah.
Like on the second floor. It's like, how am I gonna go down?
That's why when I go to like the hotel, I just like, okay, give me the room like the lowest room. Don't give me like the top one. I don't know how I gonna go down though.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I don't know, that thing isn't really thought of a lot. Like that's what I worry about, but like other people don't, right?
Yeah, it's. I mean, I talk about it. I harp on it all the time, but like a lot of the time, we can trace the problem back to planning committees that just didn't have a disabled person anywhere
Yeah,
nearby.
exactly.
So yeah, I guess we're about at time.
Yeah,
here,
we're
but
almost at time.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess
part of the
before we
thing.
end it, like, does anyone have any last words before I make the announcements?
Any last words?
Well,
This would be a really good one to put in. Where's the ramp?
yes, where's the ramp?
Yeah, where is the ramp? Where is the elevator? Where is accessible stuff?
Where's the affordable stuff as well? We talk about like disabled people being oftentimes discriminated against in employment settings, and housing for disabled people is especially expensive. It's the worst possible confluence of circumstances there.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's good that I am in my studio. We are designing a townhouse where there's an elevator.
Wow.
Yes.
That's amazing. Yes. Okay. So
Hybrid elevator dumbwaiter type situation.
okay, so this is the end of our podcast episode. We talked about a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
Our original topic was friends, environment, and disability, but somehow we talked about, I guess, like, I guess the history of like the suburbs. What else? Zoning.
It was all related. We're good at podcasting. I
It's
insist.
all related.
It's all related.
Yeah, because that environment, that's the built environment. It's like zoning. That's why cities are built in such a way like that, where it doesn't actually is accessible for everyone. And like, okay, back to the original topic. Sometimes like the environment and disability are really good friends, but other times they're like enemies or like mean to each other. And like that's what we kind of highlighted throughout like this podcast, and how like environment isn't built for us. Our next club meeting, this is where I do the announcements. Our next club meeting will be on Friday, March 18th, March 18th at 6:30 p.m., where we will talk about the disability at Sac State. So we could also talk about, like, in that meeting, we could also talk about universal design as well. Our next event is on Friday, March 11th at 6:30 again. It's basically a movie night. So if you want, we haven't decided a movie yet. So if you want to watch a specific movie, then talk to us, talk to any one of us. And we post episodes every Mondays at 12 p.m. Thank you so much for listening. Please check us out on our socials, blog series on kscc.com, and our podcast. We also have our podcast and club meeting schedule up on social media at Dana at Sac State. And we're looking for more guests as well. So if you're interested in joining us in this conversation, feel free to reach out to us on Instagram. And it's also on our link tree, which is linked on Instagram as well. So if you missed anything or the previous episodes and club meetings, you can check us out on YouTube, where we post our recordings there at Dana at Sac State. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Bye, everyone. # where's the ramp?
Bye.
We should have called this one Frenemies. Environment and Disability.
We still can.
You're listening to Through Our Lens with the Disabled and Non-Disabled Alliance at Sacramento State, a club, organization, whatever, for disabled students, staff, and their allies to discuss and educate each other about disability-related topics, advocate on behalf of disabled students and the community, and to hang out together and just be a community.
So we want to be more recognizable to Sac State. So please join the conversation by following and messaging us on Instagram at Dana at Sac State. It's DANA at Sac State.